Repetition is a crucial element of music in many cultures, whether it's a phrase, a riff, a chorus, or a beat. The idea of repeating is hard-baked into the DNA of the art form. We obsess over our favourite genres, artists, albums and songs, and we listen to them again and again. It's in our nature. We like familiarity. It feels safer, and it gives us a context that helps us identify change when it occurs. Musicians have been experimenting with looping sound material with technology to create music for a long time. For example, multi-tracking has been around since the 50s. However, some practitioners, such as Pierre Schaeffer and Halim El-Dab, were pioneers in experimentation with technology and looping to create their compositions. A radio broadcast engineer in Paris, Pierre Schaeffer began experimenting and pushing the limitations of music technology in the 40s. First at a station for Radio Diffusion Française, the French national public broadcaster, before founding his own studio in 1942. Post-World War II, Schaeffer used this as a hub for many years, building the foundation for what would later be known as musique concrète, music that is constructed and based upon recorded sounds. He first started looping material using specifically made phonograph discs that have a closed groove, allowing the tape head to seamlessly flow from the end of the recording into the beginning, creating the loop. He eventually graduated onto using magnetic tape after co-founding the GRMC studio with Pierre Henry in 1951, a classically trained composer and percussionist. The studio was the first designed specifically for electroacoustic music, and over a period of about 10 years, the two would see much success in innovating music technology, including the pioneering of new techniques and invention, not least splicing and looping magnetic tape. Schaeffer's work bridged the gap between traditional compositional processes and technology, giving artists new possibilities, even those already in the avant-garde space, to create using technology as part of the creative process. While Schaeffer is credited as a pioneer in the use of magnetic tape, Halim El-Dab's work, specifically his expression of Za in 1944, predates Schaeffer's work by about 4 years. It is to this day some of the first known work created using electronic means. Schaeffer and El-Dab laid the foundation for experimentation with music technology, a practice which shaped electronic music and helped to create new genres, from the avant-garde musique concrète to genres that still permeate music culture today, such as ambient and drone music. In 1955, the Canadian composer Hugh LeCaine took a recording of a single drop of water, and with the use of special purpose tape recorder, tape loops and innovative techniques, created a piece he called Dripsody, another entry into musique concrète. With fascinating musical textures, the sound experiment was an example of how you could manipulate and recontextualize even the simplest of real-life recordings, through techniques such as changing the speed of the tape, and therefore the pitch, reversing the tape, splicing the tape in various ways, and utilizing tape delays by recording the sound of the recorder and playing it back at a lower amplitude. By the late 50s, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop began adopting magnetic tape manipulation techniques, popularized by musique concrète composers, to create special effects and music for BBC broadcasts. By the late 60s, the use of tape manipulation, specifically looping, was beginning to bridge into other genres of music besides musique concrète. Terry Riley had already begun implementing tape loops in his compositions by the late 50s, and over the course of the 60s would release his most influential work. In 1963, he released Music for the Gift, a tape looping piece based on a recording of the Chet Baker Quartet playing a Miles Davis tune, So What? It was during a session creating this piece and working on tape loops that led Riley and one of his engineers to the discovery of what came to be known as the time lag accumulator. This was basically a tape delay feedback system involving tape strung between two recorders, with the signal from the second fed back into the first to be mixed with the existing signal, creating a feedback loop that could be controlled to create either a cleaner signal with no effect or a dense, chaotic kind of sound, as Riley himself put it. "1964 saw him create his most well-known piece. Terry Riley's In C is cited as one of the first, if not the first, entry into minimalist music. Consisting of 53 different musical phrases of varying lengths, it is designed to be played by any number of musicians or different instruments, with the performer starting from the first phrase and working their way through until they play all 53. The genius in this piece comes from the fact that no two performances can really be the same, and it is the performer's own choice when they choose to move from one musical phrase to the next. An eighth note pulse is the only constant voice through the piece and can be played at any tempo. Performers of this piece can play at any desirable dynamic or volume, and the piece only ends when all performers have made their way through all 53 segments, at which point the piece slowly fades away. Although tape looping is not used in this piece, the ideas behind it have formed the inspiration for others who have implemented such technology. Steve Reich is another contributor and pioneer of minimalist music. Equipped with two Wallensack recorders and a recording of the religious preacher in Union Square, a 28-year-old Reich, who had previously worked with Terry Riley on his In C composition, created his first major piece and one of the most famous examples of phase shifting. The piece is comprised of two loops, each of different lengths, and running simultaneously on two tape machines. Starting in sync, disparities in the length of the loop, the speed of the playback, and small differences between the two machines means the two loops slowly move out of alignment, resulting in a variety of melodic and rhythmic interplay before the two eventually come back around to sync with one another. So this is my attempt at some sort of phasing experiment. It's a bit difficult to do it on cassettes, I think, just to line them up properly and play them at the same time, so you at least get a little bit of it where it's sort of in time. Brian Eno would later go on to explain that Steve Reich's work was his first exposure to minimalist music and was a direct influence to his work, creating the foundation of what Eno would later call ambient music. Eno was a keyhead figure in the use of tape loops as compositional tools, with artists such as the Beatles and other psychedelic acts of the 60s and 70s using tape looping as a basis of their tracks. Eno worked and performed alongside guitarist Robert Fripp for a number of years, working on tape delay systems similar to Terry Riley's Time Lag Accumulator. Towards the end of the decade, Eno's solo work would come to define the genre of ambient music through the use of tape looping. Music for Airports, Eno's sixth studio album, was intended as a backdrop for airport terminals. Created through tape loops of different lengths that played simultaneously, motifs play against each other and create new textures and layers each time the loops come back around. Following innovations in technology, including sequencers and synthesizers, as well as MIDI integration in the 80s, meant that tape looping was being used less and less. It's simply more convenient and easier to create similar effects through quicker and more reliable technology. However, there have been a few examples of practitioners utilizing the unique aspects of tape and leaning into the limitations and quality issues to add color and nostalgic feelings in their music. William Basinski's Disintegration Loops is my personal favourite example. Released in 2002, Basinski created this piece when transferring tape recordings taken 2 decades prior from tape to a more reliable digital format. He observed the degradation of the tape and how as it passed through the tape head, it worsened over time, as the ferrite coating on the tape wore off, creating gaps and impurities in the audio quality. Allowing these recordings to loop for prolonged periods of time, processed with reverb, resulted in a powerful outlet for Basinski, who finished the piece on the morning of the September 11 attacks.